This is Metro Week. Our top story, the Tucson City Council election. This week we'll hear directly from the candidates who want your vote. We'll start with the two people running for office in Tucson's West Side, Ward 1. Then those who want to represent the northeast side of Tucson in Ward 2.
Welcome to Metro Week. I'm Andrea Kelly. We're kicking off our Tucson City election coverage today. We start with two of the city races this week. First, in the city's West Side Ward 1, Tucson City Councilwoman Regina Romero, a Democrat, seeks her third term in office. Republican Bill Hunt hopes to win his first term. To allow us to get straight to the issues here, we've posted the candidates' biographical and campaign contact information on our elections website. Now, there's an interview in our studio. Thank you both for joining us. We mutually agreed before the interview that you would get the first question, Ms. Romero. So I want to ask about downtown redevelopment, some of the tax incentives that the council has approved. Is downtown on the right track? That's in your ward.
Absolutely, it is, and we've worked really hard in the past 7 years to be able to get to where we are. And we still need to move forward, but the mayor and council, with our leadership and my leadership on the council, we've been able to approve an infill incentive district. We have been able to do a main gate overlay, a downtown links overlay.
What do those mean, overlays?
The overlays are to give more options to developers to develop density. So we give them much more and easier ways to be able to develop density without as much parking, with different options so that developers want to develop downtown. We also have incentives in our downtown core to make sure that people can develop, like the GPLET is a government properly leased excise tax, which we help with financing the projects. Some of these projects have been able to happen because of the incentives that mayor and council have approved and put on the table. So $1 billion worth of private and public investment in our downtown, $63 million Tiger Grant, the biggest in the country. We see downtown investment happening, lots of jobs being created, and the possibility of more. So I'm very happy with how mayor and council has been able to add to what has been happening downtown.
Mr. Hunt, is downtown on the right track?
Well, I don't know. I think it is. I think that we're looking, it is growing, but I think we need to do more. And I think, as the Congresswoman mentioned, there are a lot of incentives going on, and those are good incentives to bring business to downtown. But we do need to do more. And I don't know if you disagree with that. I don't think you do. I mean, but we do need to do more. And I think that we need to bring in small businesses. I think we need to streamline the process to bring in small businesses, because that's what will grow the tax base. That's what will grow the city and give us the revenues that we need. So yeah, the incentives are there, but let's do more. We still see a lot of empty storefronts. We still see a lot of empty lots. We got to bring and be business friendly in Tucson.
You're nodding, so it looks like you are both in agreement
That's
on
exactly,
this.
He's saying what we've already been doing. We created, under my leadership and the rest of my colleagues on the council, an economic initiatives office to make sure that we're working with the small businesses. We streamlined a lot of development services processes so that we could help the small businesses. And the lots that you see are being developed. So we're going to see an AC Marriott. It's being built right now as we speak. The first hotel in downtown since the 1970s. So we are seeing the investment happen, and the small business incentives have been created. Of course, we need to do more, and as every democracy needs to change and move and adjust, we are doing that. But the success that's happening downtown is not happening just because. It's because the mayor and council and other organizations like Rio Nuevo are moving hard in conjunction with the city to make it happen.
Just a little longer on this issue. What else would you do then?
Well, the thing is that, again, she's mentioned this, I'm going to go back, are we doing enough? And I've never started a small business. I don't know, but I have a lot of friends who have. And I know the bureaucracy and the difficulty they've had getting permits and getting things through the city has been tremendous and overwhelming for them. You mentioned streamlining, but this is something that needs to happen, and we need, for Tucson, for her, for me, for all of us, we need to make Tucson business friendly and make it look like it's business friendly to everybody that looks at Tucson and is thinking about coming here. But they got to have the idea that, yeah, if I come to Tucson, I'm going to get help from the city. They're going to help me as opposed to hinder me, which I think is somewhat of the perception, real or imagined, is the perception that businesses have now.
I want to switch topics so we can get through a few other topics during our interview and ask about the Barrio Hollywood Neighborhood Association situation. There has been some controversy, we can call it infighting because it's all internal to the neighborhood, about who can be on the Neighborhood Association board. And it's the only neighborhood, to my knowledge, in the city that is having this debate and this controversy. And I want to ask you, how has it affected the ward overall?
I haven't seen it affect the ward. I mean, but then I'm running in the ward, and I don't deal with everyday business in the ward. I know that as I go around the ward and the city, all over, you know, I'm looking at citywide issues and in the ward issues. I haven't addressed that particular issue.
Do you think the council has a role in that issue?
If it affects the role of the city, certainly.
Okay. And how is this affecting the ward, and does the council have a role?
I think that the role of a council member is to not take sides. That's my position on all of the other neighborhoods that I deal with. I know that there's internal concerns and infighting in many different neighborhoods throughout the city and in Ward 1. But I usually recommend either mediation, and my council office has paid for mediation before with other neighborhoods. That has helped, and sometimes it doesn't help. But my position has always been I'm not going to choose a side because that is not good for the neighborhood itself. I think that they need to talk about it, they need to have meetings about it, they need to come to decisions and vote, and the decisions that they make will be supported by the council office. So I don't feel as though that particular issue is affecting the ward in itself or the city in itself, but I think it's important that there's consensus building, there's mediation, and that the neighborhood continue to work not only with the neighbors but also the surrounding community in their area.
I want to talk about a topic that I feel like we just cannot ignore during these council interviews, and that's the SunTrans strike. But I want you to look at it as part of a bigger issue, and that is the budget. So whether or not there's enough money to afford raises in SunTrans is part of a budget discussion, and I am interested in how the council can get out of this long-term budget issue that has been happening year after year. What are the long-term solutions to the budget?
Well, first and foremost, the most important thing we need to do is stop the strike. And I have been working, even before the strike was called, with the city manager to make sure that they instruct PTM, TransDev, to sit at the table and find a solution.
And those are
the same thing with the
SunTrans.
Teamsters. So the same thing with the Teamsters. They need to make sure that they are sitting down with the budget that they have and creatively move forward. They do have the option, I believe, to extend their contract one more year so that they can continue discussing on potential long-term solutions. Long-term, this is what I feel. First and foremost, we need to make sure that the city of Tucson audits PTM TransDev, which is the management company that runs SunTrans. We need to make sure that management and operations are running squeaky clean, and then have a discussion with the community about potential dedicated funding sources. But I feel as though before we start talking about dedicated funding sources, we need to see which departments in the City of Tucson budget are rising in cost. Those are public safety and transit. And for me, public safety and transit are very important. We continue investing in those departments, and we really need to look at where is it a combined dedicated funding source, or is it a funding source for public safety? So before anyone starts saying dedicated funding source for transit, we need to have a cleanup, run that department and manage and operate it squeaky clean so that the community knows and the taxpayer know that they're investing in a well-run system, and then have a community-wide conversation about our departments that are costing the most. And I've always believed in a dedicated funding source for public safety. Every city in the valley has it. Phoenix, Scottsdale, Mesa, they all have a dedicated funding source for public safety.
And a lot of those are sales taxes.
A lot of those are sales taxes, and we could go in the same direction, or we could look at other options, but I feel that conversation has to happen.
All right, I want to make sure you have a chance to answer this as well.
Sure. Well, I
Suntran as
agree
symptom
with
of larger problem.
Councilwoman, Romero on the fact that the strike needs to end. The thing to remember is that the budget for this year has been set. So they're working within that budget. That's not going to change, okay? So they need to come to an agreement. We need to get this strike ended. But in the future, we need to make sure that we try to eliminate or reduce this issue, or that it can happen again. And funding for Suntran, I believe we need to take a hard look at and I think what you're saying is correct. You look at the departments and you clean them up, or audit them to that point. But we also need to take a hard look at rates for Suntran and
Like the fares?
On the fares. Yeah, I'm going to say it on the fares. We need to take a look at that, and we need to take a hard look at the amount of buses that we run per hour and the size of the buses and so forth to see if we can't reduce cost overall. But I do want to point out that at this instant in time, because we have the budget already, we're limited. Their budget's what it is. And they've got to settle within that right now.
And if I may add, Andrea, I've requested, just yesterday I requested an update on the strike and management of operations of Suntran for the Wednesday council meeting, so that we can talk about everything that has been done and everything else that we can do. So
that will be open session, or
that will be a
closed door?
study session, open session, and precisely because I feel that community needs to listen to what PTM TransDev and the city manager have been doing to find a resolution for the strike. It has to stop. People are suffering and not going to work, not going to school. It has to stop. So, but one thing that I do want to say is that within the budget that the City Council approved for Suntran, there is available gas savings or other savings from not running the system entirely to be able to creatively put on the table for the Teamsters to use. Not even opening the budget, the additional money's there. So I'm going to hopefully, along with my colleagues, give some direction to the city manager so that we can find a solution and stop this strike.
All right, our next question, I'm going to keep it really short because we've got just about 90 seconds left. When one of you takes office in December, there is a new city manager. There's going to be a new police chief soon, and there are other department heads that are going to be open, positions that will be open. What is the top priority the city should be focusing on in December when you take office?
Well, for me, it's going to be what the city charter says. We're going to look at fire and police, infrastructure, roads. We need to take a hard look at the roads and the parks, right? I mean, they're in the charter. I mean, they're right there. So as we take a look at those issues, are you referring to who we would choose or how we would? But
not specific people, but priority issues.
Well, the priority issue to me is public safety. That's basically number one. And then I would put infrastructure, which is roads, and I include Suntran in that. Infrastructure, get the roads straightened out in the city. I want people to come to the city, and I don't want them to have to fight potholes to do so.
All right, top priority when this next term starts in December.
I feel that Mr. Hunt is going to be happy when I'm there in December, because I agree with him in terms of the priorities. Public safety, we need to make sure that we structurally fix our budget, and the conversation should be dedicated funding source for public safety and or transit. Make sure that I see the openings of department directors in our city as a wonderful opportunity to creatively move forward. Infrastructure is very important. I, for 8 years, have said that public infrastructure leverages private investment. And so I feel that infrastructure and a new direction, finding a structured budget is what we're going to look forward
And
to.
I'm going to have to stop you there because we are out of time. Thank you both for coming in.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Rivera. Tonight on Arizona Week, a first ever report looking at the impact of Hispanics in southern Arizona.
You don't have to be Hispanic to be part of this boom. All you need is a commitment to that demographic of the new economy.
Welcome back. Now we'll hear from the candidates in Ward 2. That's Tucson's northeast side. Again, the basic biographical and campaign information is on our website to allow the candidates to jump right into our discussion. In this race, Democratic incumbent Paul Cunningham seeks his second full term in office, and Republican Kelly Lawton hopes to unseat him. When one of you takes office in December, you will represent the whole city, but the city council is also arranged by wards, depending on the area of the city that you live in. So I want to start by asking you, Mr. Lawton, how the priorities of your ward differ from the whole city overall.
The priorities of the ward and how they differ the city overall, well, that's an awesome question. One of the first things I'd like to kind of bring to mind here is that being that it is a citywide election, all the constituents citywide, 236 square miles, should be represented fairly and equally. So when it comes to the issues of the city, we should, as council members, be looking at the quality of life for all citizens in Tucson, regardless of ward. It is specific to the city. It is a citywide election, and that's the important piece to remember.
Do you see any priorities that are distinct to Ward 2?
Ward 2 is a very unique district or constituency. I've lived in Ward 2 almost all my life. The important pieces there is that we look at the economy. The economy as a whole is the citywide. It's not just Ward 2. We look at police and fire. It's not just Ward 2. So the issues that really face Tucson, Arizona are not specific to Ward 2. It's citywide.
Mr. Cunningham, same question. The priorities of Ward 2, how do they differ from the rest of the city?
The priorities in Ward 2, we have a higher elderly population than the rest of the city. We have one stretch of road that's probably our most focused stretch of road, which is from Camino Seco to Houghton, and we've really worked hard out of Ward 2 to the Ward 2 office now to move that project along. I think it's about 18 or 19 months ahead of schedule at this point. The other piece that we have in Ward 2 is we have some, I'd like to see a second police outpost closer to where Ward 2 City Hall is at 75 East Speedway right now. We have some, where our East Side Division is centralized way east at Golf Links and Harrison. We used to have at least some type of satellite office for police over by the fire station at 75 East Speedway. I think it would definitely compartmentalize some of our patrol resources that would make it a little bit more fluid. I think the other piece in Ward 2 is we have to continue engaging the elderly community, engaging the church community on the east side, and have them work together. I'm proud of some of the things that have happened in Ward 2 in the last 4 years. We've paved almost every corridor, major corridor with the exception of the Broadway piece. We've had park improvements. We got Jesse Owens Park included on the bond package. We've seen improvements to both Udall Park and Fort Lowell Park. Palo Verde Park, Fort Lowell Park, Udall Park, and Jesse Owens all had their pools open for the first time this past summer, and I'm proud of those accomplishments. Finally, we have a very good commercial occupancy rate in Ward 2 right now as far as retail. I'd like to see that momentum continue.
Do you have something to add?
Actually, when we talk about police in Ward 2, it is of concern, and I would like to point out the fact that Team 4, which covers Ward 2, when we look at staffing and we look at manpower planning for police and public safety, we've gone from 111 police officers to 67 that actually represent Ward 2. That's a dramatic decrease in public safety. We look at our roads. The road that Mr. Cunningham spoke about, this one stretch of road, has been a bombardment of potholes for years. And year over year, it continues to, we continue to kick the can down the road or point the fingers to RTAs. It's RTA's responsibility. It's in my opinion, it is the issues that really face Tucson in Ward 2. When we think about police and we think about roads, it is really a lack of proactivity. There is the roadway that he spoke about and the paving and so on. There is work being done. But the unfortunate piece is that it's all being done at one time. And I find it highly coincidental that it's happening right around the election period. The thought here is that we have to be proactive in the way that we manage our city. We have to, year over year, we have to go after it. We have to set our goals. We have to prioritize what's important. In Ward 2, it's the only part of the city that's experiencing these manhole cover spikes. People are driving high rate, roads, and they're, having to repair tires. There's a whole boatload of safety issues. This is happening in Ward 2.
I actually have a question about a specific road project that I want to ask you both about, and I'll start with you because we started the first question with you. Mr. Cunningham, the Kolb Road extension to Sabino Canyon Road is a pretty controversial RTA project. It's to make Kolb Road go all the way through kind of near Udall Park and some neighborhoods there so that people would not have to go through the Tanque Verde, Grant, Kolb, Wilmot intersection. What has been your role on that project?
From the beginning, that project was not endorsed by any neighborhoods in Tucson. It was a very difficult place to be in because the main people who benefit from it don't live in the city. So you represent your constituents and your conscience. However, the biggest issue we have there is that Sabino Canyon and Kolb, if we continue to just stay the course, that project will be unmanageable in the next 3 years. Because the traffic load that backs up behind Sabino Canyon is so vast, especially during rush hour, it has become an unmanageable situation. So the bottom line we have to come down to is do we have to build the road or not? We do.
And what's your role in that then?
So my role was to ensure that the Bureau of Land Management, that the city signed off in their agreement with the Bureau of Land Management so that the project could move forward. Apparently, there is a covenant with the city of Tucson and BLM from several years ago that to facilitate the project being moved forward, we have to approve a Udall Park master plan, and that was the main piece that we did. So we walked through that. Basically, when I took office in 2010, that project all those articles had moved forward. It's come back a couple of other times. However, we have started the intersection, and the construction on the other piece is moving forward. On the other side, just to respond on the previous discussion, I want to make sure people understand that Team 4 has an 111-person staffing. That number has never been reduced. We have 91 of those positions filled right now, and we'll continue to try to fill as many as we can. The police department's actual size and actual police officer size was reduced to under 900 people. In 2011, it's been increased to 1,002, and our biggest problem is staffing and patrol, and we're working very proactively actively on that.
So you're working to hire those. And I do want to return to the road question. What would your role be on this Kolb Road Sabino Canyon extension project?
This is another example of Mr. Cunningham's lack of leadership. This particular stretch of road that we're talking about, neighborhood association just west of Udall Park, this project has gone from $9 to $14 million. So that's in the course of however long, the time frame of this thing initiating to current day. So the taxpayers, the folks that are, the neighborhood association, they're up in arms about this. This is an issue. There's no cost savings. Again, the fiscal impact from $9 to $14 million is significant. As far as that particular piece of road, it should have been something that the neighborhood association has been clued in on, communicated, a little bit more transparency as far as program details, timelines. There's a whole series of discrepancies with that whole project. So when we really look at the bottom line, the time that's been allotted, the time that's been wasted, the project has since grown from $9 to $14 million.
And define your role on it as a council member.
Take the lead. It's my responsibility to lead in Ward 2. And by doing so is to reach out and network with those constituents in that particular ward, that neighborhood, balance out the impact of that particular project, and let's get the ball rolling. You know, that's just for me, it's all about proactivity. It's all about being forward thinking. Every action that we take at City Council should be focused on two things. What's the cost, and how does it benefit the citizens of Tucson, Arizona, and my ward? That's how it would work. So we have to take a leadership role in order to create change and improve our quality of life.
Another budget and transportation topic is the SunTrans strike, which is still going on as we film this interview. What do you think the city's role should be in preventing a future one or ending this current strike?
This issue, it's an unfortunate issue because the folks that's impacting the most are the folks that need that particular mode of transportation, those that have financial trouble. 2 years ago, there was recommendations made where a comprehensive operational analysis was conducted. Recommendations were presented to Mr. Cunningham and others on the council in regard to the issues facing SunTran. Of that, there were 2 recommendations that resonated. One was look at deficiencies in the route. How can we better serve the public? And we probably want to consider a fare increase because there are considerable subsidies that are dedicated to that particular method or mode. Unfortunately, when it came to vote, there were only 2 folks that stood up and said, you know, yeah, we need to do this. Mr. Cunningham voted no. He said, no, I'm not going with COA. And unfortunately, now we're feeling the repercussions of this. There was a $4.8 million savings with the COA recommendation. Instead, we went with Mr. Cunningham's and others' recommendation, or the recommendation from the TTT, the Task Force, Transport Task Force, and there's $110,000. So $110,000 versus $4.8 million. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a mathematician to figure out that balance is out of balance. So when it comes to this particular issue, again, now we've got an issue on our hands where we've got a bus strike that's impacting folks going to work, folks going to school, folks going from point A to point B. That's their only mode of transportation.
And I want to make sure that Mr. Cunningham has a chance to respond, and you have about equal time on this question.
So basically what's going on is I really find it weird that we have all these riders who are suffering the most, but we're going to put the price of the strike back on the riders. I don't really understand how that logic even works. The COA that we did vote in did save $1.7 million. The Teamsters walked away with a $2.7 million offer on the table. The money was there. That package allows them to have a 50% increase on the lowest paid drivers. That allows them to keep their pension program. That allows them to continue to no longer pay health savings. So I kind of reject that argument. The other piece is...
Let me return you to the question, though, that what do you think the city's role should be in
stopping
this or preventing a future?
The city's role, most importantly, is tell them to go back to the table. We can't be involved in the negotiations. The city council has done everything in their power to urge the 2 parties to go back to the table. That's what we're supposed to be able to do. And we've asked them to go back to the table several times. At this point, for me, it's not about PTM. I mean, some people think this is PTM's fault. Some people are saying...
Let me just clarify, that's Professional Transit Management, which is the overhead company for
Some
SunTran.
people think this is PTM's issue. Some people think it's a Teamster issue. I have to say that for me right now, it's about the riders, and we want service to be restored. They're the ones who are suffering the most, and so you want to have that opportunity for the riders to get back on the bus, and we have to have those 2 parties at the table, and each one says that the other one isn't coming to the table, and that's where the impasse is.
We've got just about a minute left, so I want to give you each a chance to answer this one question quite briefly, and that is, what voice is underrepresented in the City Council considerations and decisions at this point? What voice needs to be heard more at the table?
Well, I think the voice that needs to be heard is the voice of reason, the voice of pragmatism, and the voice of making a deal. I think we've led the way in a long time for that. I think we've done a really good job.
And I'm going to cut you off there to get an answer from Mr. Lawton as well.
The voice of the people. Bottom line, we need transparency, we need proactivity, and we need to serve the people of Tucson, Arizona.
All right, I want to thank you both for coming in and taking the time to speak to voters about the Ward 2 race and your priorities. Thank you. You can find more information about the candidates, including contact information, on our election website. Our Journalist Roundtable will be back next week. Thanks for watching.